Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through the noise, find the key insights, and, well, basically give you a shortcut to being well-informed.
No overload, just the good stuff.
Exactly. And today, you'll probably appreciate that shortcut because we're diving into something pretty deep, maybe even challenging.
Definitely challenging. We're looking at the philosophical idea that your sense of being a separate you,
Your eye.
yeah, your I, might just be, well, an illusion, an elaborate one.
Wow. Okay. So starting right off with the big questions, where are we drawing this from?
It's a really fascinating philosophical deconstruction. It pulls together ideas from, non-duality.
The idea that everything's ultimately one?
Right. And also phenomenology, the study of experience itself, and even touches on neuroscience findings.
Okay. And the mission, what are we trying to trace here for you, the listener?
The mission is to see how this illusion of a separate self actually seems to coil into reality, how it takes shape.
Coils into reality. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, and we'll do this using 4 kind of archetypal symbols: the egg, the embryo, the walnut, and the labyrinth.
Symbols. So metaphors.
Not quite just metaphors. This is where it gets cool. The source calls them recursive blueprints.
Recursive blueprints, meaning
Meaning they're supposed to show the actual structure, the scaffolding of the illusion itself. They're not pointing beyond to some secret truth or transcendence.
okay, so it's about seeing the trick, not finding a hidden rabbit.
You got it. It's about seeing how the trick works.
There's a quote in the source about the fundamental error.
Oh, yeah, that's powerful. The fundamental error is not in thought, but in the misplacement of identity, mistaking the clouded reflection for the sky.
Mistaking the reflection for the sky. That really paints a picture. But it feels so real, this sense of me. How do we square that feeling with just misplacing identity?
That's the core paradox, isn't it? And it's unsettling. The whole point of looking at these symbols, the source says, isn't to find some better self hiding underneath.
No. Then what?
It's to encounter the empty stage upon which the drama of self plays itself out.
The empty stage.
Yeah. And the wisdom isn't in finding an answer, but in undoing the very question that presupposes separation.
Okay, so this deep dive, it's not really aiming for some final clarity then.
Kind of the opposite, almost. It spirals not toward clarity, but toward the gentle dissolution of the one who seeks clarity.
Gentle dissolution.
Which leads to this truth the source calls both terrible and liberating.
Which is?
There was never anyone here to awaken.
Wow. Okay, that definitely challenges things.
Every assumption, really.
All right, well, if you're listening and you're ready for a journey that's going to poke at some very basic ideas about who you think you are.
And maybe spark a few aha moments about consciousness.
Then let's do this. Let's unpack it. Where do we start?
Yeah.
With the egg.
We start with the egg. The egg, the original fracture of unity, as the source puts it.
The original fracture. So this symbolizes the very beginning of separation.
Sort of, but maybe not how you'd expect. The egg here isn't just like an object or even a start. It's presented as wholeness, undivided presence that hasn't forgotten itself yet.
Okay.
But here's the twist, the key insight. The source says the egg does not break. It only appears to.
Wait, hang on. It appears to break, so the crack isn't real. It's not a fundamental split.
Exactly, that's the claim. What shatters is not a shell, but the illusion of separation, projected retroactively onto a moment that never occurred.
Projected retroactively. So we imagine the break happened before there was even a concept of inside or outside.
Pretty much. That imagined crack is the first move of duality. Consciousness makes a shadow, points to it, and calls it other, but nothing actually got kicked out. There's no real outside, because the outside emerges only when the inside is believed.
That's mind-bending. Does this idea of an apparent break connect with other ways of thinking about reality, like philosophically or spiritually?
Okay, absolutely. You can definitely see parallels. Take Advaita Vedanta, the Hindu philosophy.
Sure, the non-dual school.
Right. It talks about Sat Chit Ananda being consciousness, bliss, as one indivisible reality. From that view, our egg isn't the start of life. It's the moment we sort of forget that unity.
So the crack is just mistaking a distinction for a real division.
Exactly. The observer seems to be born, but it's just a ripple in what's being observed. Like the source says, the sky was never divided by the cloud.
It's interesting, even modern science seems to find, well, echoes of this. Neuroscience talks about the default mode network, right? The part of the brain that gives us our sense of I.
Yeah, the DMN, the brain's storyteller, in a way.
Is that the neural mirage the source mentions? The brain echoing this mistake?
That's a good way to put it. Neuroscience sees the echo, maybe not the original misidentification. Like when people meditate, the DMN quiets down.
And they report feeling less self.
Often, yeah. A sense of boundarylessness, as if the I factory shuts down for a bit.
Hmm.
But the source suggests this self-model in the brain isn't the root illusion, it's a trace.
A trace.
Yeah, like Metzinger's ego tunnel idea that our conscious self is a kind of controlled hallucination. But our source says it's more like a coil, recursive, transparent. The illusion isn't just having the self, it's believing that self can somehow see itself from outside the tunnel.
Okay. And Buddhism. Famous for no self, anatta. How does that fit?
Buddhism is incredibly direct here. It doesn't try to fix the egg because there's nothing broken. It just points out it wasn't real to begin with.
So anatta isn't saying you don't exist, but more like the thing you think is you, that solid self, that was never there.
Exactly. It refuses to believe in it. The 5 aggregates, form, sensation, they aren't pieces of a self, just activity, movement within presence, mistakenly bundled together.
So if you look closely at the egg.
It dissolves into process. No yoke of identity inside. The Buddha didn't wake up from sleep. He woke up from the dream of there being a dreamer. The cracking was just a change in perspective.
Okay, so the egg shows the illusory crack. Then comes the embryo. The embryo, the spiral of identification. This feels like where the self idea starts to really solidify.
Yeah, it's about coiling into form, but maybe not growth as we usually think of it. The source says the embryo doesn't grow, it folds.
Folds.
Curls inward, like awareness tracing its own tangle. There's no real starting point. It's a spiral without an anchor. It's not a body developing. It's the idea of identification itself, folding presence into this illusion of having a location.
So when we feel embodied, we're buying into a separation that isn't fundamentally real, according to this view.
That's what the embryo symbol suggests. It's a paradox. Form seems to arise from formlessness, but without actually leaving it. It's an existential spiral, not just physical.
Like Merleau-Ponty's lived body in phenomenology. The body not as an object, but as our way of perceiving.
Exactly like that. The embryo in this source isn't something consciousness moves into. It's consciousness mistaking its own clear nature for something solid, seeing, becoming the seen almost.
So the quote, "The incarnation is not the entry of spirit into matter. It is the illusion that such a division was ever possible."
Right. The division itself is the illusion.
This makes me think about psychology, psychoanalysis maybe, ideas about boundaries, early development.
Oh, absolutely. Psychoanalysis maps this curling into form really well. Freud's ego, Lacan's mirror stage.
The mirror stage, when the baby sees itself in the mirror.
Right. And Lacan says that's not finding a true self. It's the first betrayal. Accepting that limited reflection as me, the infinite takes on a finite image. That tightens the spiral.
So our body image isn't something we have, but a prison built of apparent continuity. Yet the embryo image suggests unfolding is also possible.
Yes, exactly. What knots itself through identification can unknot, not by fighting it, but just by losing interest in the illusion, not engaging.
And this connects to broader mystical ideas, too.
Definitely. Think of Kabbalah, the descent through the Sephirot, the divine emanations. It looks like fragmentation, but maybe it's just this spiral of forgetting.
A journey through mistaken identity, not through space.
Right. Even Gilgul, the soul cycle, might be less about moving between lives and more about this rhythm of misplacing identity. But the core insight is always there. The end is embedded in the beginning. The spiral holds its own undoing.
So being born isn't entering time, but entering the idea of being born. The embryo just turns and nothing has happened. There is only the turning.
Precisely.
Okay, from the embryo's illusion, we get to the walnut, the brain's recursive mirror. This seems to target directly where most people locate consciousness, the brain.
And that's the whole point of the symbol. The walnut, looking like a brain with all its folds, isn't the source of thought. It's its echo.
An echo.
Yeah, like a convoluted mirror that we mistake for the thing being reflected. It's recursive, folds hiding folds, mimicking complexity. We mistake that complexity for depth, for the origin.
So the common idea that the brain produces consciousness, like a little theater in the head showing the mirror.
Our source basically says, there is no actor. The spotlight shines on no one. The audience was always a projection of the scene.
If the brain did produce consciousness, it'd be like a mirror making light, mistaking reflection for source.
Exactly. Dennett's Cartesian theater idea that there's one spot in the brain where it all comes together, the source would say that's just a symptom of the mistake. The self isn't in the head. The head appears in the story the self tells.
So the folds don't think.
They reflect the impossibility of thought thinking the thinker. The brain's self-modeling isn't a self finding itself, it's just thought mistaking its own movement for a mover.
How does this change the whole hard problem of consciousness then? Why does subjective feeling arise from physical stuff?
Well, according to this view, it dissolves the problem. The problem is only hard if you start by assuming that split, that misplacement of identity.
Because matter isn't primary. The brain isn't the root.
Right. The walnut is the shell, not the seed. Mapping the brain more and more doesn't get us closer to solving the consciousness mystery. It just gets us more tangled in the illusion that there is something separate called consciousness produced by the brain.
So consciousness isn't in the walnut.
The walnut isn't consciousness. That's the reversal. The brain doesn't generate thought. Thought appears as brain.
Okay. So how does this relate to common distinctions, like in Eastern thought, between the mind and awareness itself?
That's a vital distinction here. Advaita, for example, differentiates manas, the thinking tool, from chit, clear, still awareness. Confusing them is like thinking the walnut is the whole tree.
The mind isn't hiding reality, it's just a ripple in reality.
Exactly. Or Dzogchen Buddhism talks about Rigpa, this clear, knowing presence that's always there. The walnut, the brain-like structure, is just the leftover shape of thought, something formless given apparent form. What we call mind is like wind patterns in infinite sand.
So the walnut's folds are samsaric, caught in cycles of confusion, but they're also empty. Just a gesture.
A gesture in the dream. And it dissolves when the belief in a separate dreamer dissolves.
Which brings us to the final symbol, the labyrinth, the pathless path to no self. Labyrinths make you think of journeys, searching.
Right, but this isn't quite a structure to navigate. It's more like a question that answers itself by falling silence.
Unlike a maze, it usually has one path, right?
Yeah, it coils to perform complexity. Walking, it feels like progress, like making choices at turns. But the center isn't actually far away. It's always right here, just hidden by the assumption you need to get somewhere.
So it's the drama of seeking, but there's no real seeker, no real goal.
Exactly. No minotaur, no treasure. The journey is the illusion. It reminds me of Zen Master Huang Po. Your everyday mind, that is the way. The labyrinth is just this moment, unexamined.
How does this connect to something like phenomenology again? Consciousness being about something.
Well, phenomenology talks about consciousness always being directed, intentional. But what if that aboutness turns back on itself? The seer becomes the seen. The labyrinth is that look.
Like Husserl's Epic A, bracketing assumptions.
Kind of, yeah. Each step in the labyrinth is like suspending an assumption. But then even the one doing the bracketing gets seen, gets bracketed. The path turns back. The final illusion is believing someone is walking it.
So the center is empty, not because something left, but because it was never occupied.
Precisely. The turns weren't mistakes. They were awareness looping through the illusion of direction until direction itself seems kind of absurd. Arrival wasn't somewhere else.
It was just what was left when the idea of leaving was forgotten.
Yes. And this clicks with so many mystical paths. Sufism's fauna, ego death. But knowing nothing actually dies, the wave realizes it was always ocean.
Or Aita's neti neti, not this.
Right, not rejecting the world, but dismantling the wrong labels we put on it. Seeing what it isn't reveals what is. The labyrinth spirals through that negation.
Like Ramana Maharshi saying, you are already that.
Exactly. He pointed to what's already true. You don't reach the center. You recognize you are it. We're always it. Awakening isn't finding the real self. It's seeing the self was the only thing blocking the view.
The seeker doesn't finish the quest.
The seeker vanishes into the seeking, and only seeking remains aimless, needless, impersonal. The labyrinth's real teaching is silence. Nothing happened. Nothing was needed. Nothing is missing.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to take in from the egg, embryo, walnut, labyrinth. So bringing it all together, the source calls this the joke of awakening. What's the joke?
Well, first, the idea of integration is already tricky, right? It implies things were separate to begin with.
Ah, right. If nothing was ever truly fractured.
Exactly. What the symbols show together is that wholeness never broke. No real journey happened. The seeker just dreamt they were separate, and that dream created these symbols to explain why it felt lost.
So the symbols weren't doorways. They were mirrors reflecting the belief that you needed a doorway.
Perfectly put. The egg never cracked. The embryo never fell. The walnut never held a mind. The labyrinth never started. What looked like mythology
It was anatomy not of a body, but of illusion.
Right. And that's where the The cosmic jest comes in, the quiet laugh.
What is the joke, specifically?
The source says the joke isn't that the search took so long, it's that we searched at all.
Because awareness was looking for itself.
Yeah, forgetting it was never missing, wandering through a dream only to end up exactly where you started because you never left.
But there's a deeper punchline.
Even deeper, there was never a seeker. The whole play had no actor, a story telling itself. A dream without a dreamer. The separate self wasn't just wrong, it was the only thing obscuring the simple reality of what is.
That definitely reframes things. If there's no separate self, what happens to classic philosophical puzzles? Like mind, body, free will. Do they get solved?
They don't get solved so much as they dissolve. They're uprooted.
How so?
Well, take the mind-body problem. It's only a puzzle if you assume two separate things. If the self is seen as illusory, that split collapses.
And personal identity over time.
Just memory patterns echoing. Free will versus determinism, a fight between ghosts. If no one acts, action just flows. The ground disappears from under the problems because the ground was the assumption of a separate self. Conceptual sand, the source calls it.
Conceptual sand. Okay. So, practically speaking, how does this land in everyday life? What does this mean for, my morning coffee, dealing with traffic?
Right, the so what? This isn't about becoming a monk or achieving a special state. It's simpler, maybe harder, just stopping the pretense.
Stopping pretending.
Yeah.
To be separate.
Yeah, so ethics doesn't need to be forced. It just arises, like fragrance from stillness. If there's no fundamental other, kindness isn't really a choice. It's just recognition.
And love.
Becomes clarity. We were never two. Suffering changes too. It's not yours to fix. It's seen as a ripple in the dream of self. Believing the dream is the suffering. Awakening is an ending pain, but stop claiming it as mine.
What about liberation, then? Is that the goal, the state to attain?
The source is clear. Liberation isn't a state. It's the absence of the one who could attain a state. The symbols egg, embryo, walnut, labyrinth, they did their job. You let them go too. They don't point somewhere else. They point back to the sheer ordinariness of being.
So realizing this isn't about feeling powerful.
No, it's about becoming light. No origin, no substance, no need for meaning. You just are. Without a concept, without an edge, without a story.
That's very light.
Yeah.
So a final thought for you listening to maybe just sit with. You are not what you think you are.
You are what thinks you are what you think you are.
You're the loop, thought folding back on itself, the clear space where the illusion of you appears and disappears.
Which means the end is always the beginning.
And the beginning. Never actually began. You were never apart. You were never apart.